Alright guys, I'm back in the car. You know what that means. I just got out of the theater watching a recently released movie, and this time it was Weapons. Now I'm going to give, as always, a brief non-spoiler review. I'm not going to lie, this movie was weird. I came into it not expecting much. To be honest, seeing this movie was Shade's idea, not mine, but the scheduling didn't work out, and so I just decided to come here by myself. I don't know if this was a movie that I would be willing to spend money on regardless. It was fine. I think the acting in it was pretty good. Josh Brolin in it, as always, is fantastic. Surprisingly enough, the child actor was pretty good. The movie, I think, suffers from the fact that Julia Garner is not necessarily a horror actor, I don't think. Most of her screams weren't necessarily believable, which is not something that I fault her for. It's a very different style of acting than she normally does. I think she's great in plenty of other things. I would like to see her in more dramatic roles. I just don't know if this was the right casting. I don't know if this was the right role for her. But she was fine enough. There were certainly some good moments. The movie is definitely interesting. I don't know. There's some scenes in here that were played off as, I don't know if they were meant to be comedic, and they were, I'm not 100% sure if there were scenes that were supposed to be serious, but because of the way that they were played, they came off comedic, or if a large part of this movie was supposed to be the sort of horror comedy aspect, but I think it was weird. It wasn't a good melding, in my opinion. I think this movie would have been much better served if it was pure horror suspense. I think there are certainly the bones of what could be a great horror film, of what could be a very suspenseful film that makes you on the, puts you on the end of your seat and keeps you there. But the comedy interspersed throughout, especially in the climax. I'm obviously not going to go into detail about that here. I'm going to save that for the spoiler portion. But certainly in the climax, I think that this could have been a really, really good suspenseful horror film, but it sort of botched it at the end. Most of the comedy in the middle I'm willing to forgive, but it's really the end where I think it messes with the tone of the movie and ultimately brings it down, in my opinion. It is a fun movie, though. I don't know if I would recommend spending the full ticket price to go see it like I did. I don't know if it's worth the, I don't know what I spent, like $13 after taxes and the fee for ordering online. Much like we mentioned with Naked Gun, I think this is a great $5, a cheap ticket movie or a matinee movie. There were lots of couples in here, so maybe it's a really good date night movie. I don't know. I wouldn't probably call it that. There's certainly some weird subject matter for it to be a date night movie, but nonetheless, what do I know? In any case, I think it was fine enough, and I'm curious to see where some of the actors are going to go after this. I think it was some great performances. Definitely didn't live up to my expectations, and I don't think lived up to the marketing because of the comedy aspect. But nonetheless, it was fine. It was some fun viewing. I don't know. I really want to talk more. I can really feel the spoilers about to bubble up in me, so we're going to end it there. I will catch you guys in the studio. Now let's roll the intro.
In Weapons, when all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. The film is directed and written by Zach Cregger and stars Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, Alden Ehrenreich, Cary Christopher, and Benedict Wong. Now, we've already done our non-spoiler review in the car, so we're going to jump right into the spoiler section. The first thing that I want to say here is that I do think the movie is fine. The beginning and the opening and really all of it up until the end of the third act is really well made. It's fairly interesting. It does a great job building up the mystery and suspense and lending itself into some of those more mysterious aspects. But it stumbles at the end. And because of that, I can't quite say that the movie is great. I don't really get... A lot of the various entertainment media outlets have been giving this like a 9 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5. They've been rating it very, very high. I would be able to do that if not for the ending. The tone of the ending is so different from the rest of the film. It feels so out of place. I don't really like it at all. Now, I am the type of person who thinks if you're making a horror movie, then it should be a horror movie. Or if you're going to do a horror comedy, then the comedy needs to be made explicit throughout the entire piece. I don't think that's the case here. There are obviously moments in the middle in some of the various sections from Josh Brolin and from Austin Abrams. There are comedic aspects, there are little jokes and one-liners and all of this, but it's very, very sparse. And then when we get to the end, we have this scene where the elderly woman, the main villain of the movie, who is played by Amy Madigan, I believe, it is incredibly comedic. I mean, it's this moment that is supposed to be it's the climax of the film. It's supposed to be the ultimate expression of this mystery and horror aspect that the film has been cultivating for, an hour and 45 minutes. But in the scene, every single person in the theater was busting out laughing. And that is partially because of the way that the actress for Gladys is running in this scene, and partially because of the way that the scene itself is constructed. I mentioned this to my dad. I mentioned this very vaguely to Shade. That final moment where Gladys is dealt with feels like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The scene specifically where Ferris is running through the neighborhoods trying to get home in time. I think that's what he's doing. I haven't seen Ferris Bueller for a very long time. My understanding is that he's trying to get home before his principal or somebody or family member or whatever shows up and proves that he's been playing hooky and hasn't been sick. And he's running through the yards, and it's got the great soundtrack. And he's running through, he sees a guy grilling, and he's like, smells good. And then he runs into the house, and he's like, dinner's done, so on and so forth. This scene felt exactly like that. And while it would be fine and funny if this were a pure horror comedy, I wouldn't necessarily mind it as much. But again, the entire hour and 45 minutes is that this is a horror movie. Little bits of comedic relief here and there, but is a movie that is supposed to make you feel a type of way. And in the end, it loses that. It loses the plot entirely. It makes a joke out of what is supposed to be, again, the climactic moment of the movie, where the villain is defeated in this, again, fairly mysterious and creepy movie. There are certainly some moments that would be considered scary. I think the opening of it is very, very well done. But simply because of that ending, because of the way that Gladys is dealt with, I cannot say that this movie is great. As much as I want to. Because like I said at the beginning, while it's not the best movie I've seen all year, it's not the best movie that's been made, it's not by any means the best horror movie that I've seen in a long time. But it's very good. It's very, very good. And so when we get to the end, and there's this moment of pure comedy, I was really, really disappointed. I was really, really disappointed. I'm not going to lie, because I mentioned in the non-spoiler review that this might not have been one that I really wanted to go see. I mainly decided to see it because, one, it's a new release, and two, because Shade was very excited about it. But as soon as we got into this and we hit the end of the first act and the story really started developing, I was invested. I was very much invested. I was excited to see how things were going to turn out and what the ultimate culmination of this was going to be. But it was just so unsatisfying. I do think, however, the story conceit for the movie itself is fairly well done. Like I said, it is sufficiently creepy. The completely mysterious disappearance of, I think it's like 27 children with only one remaining in the class is a really, really interesting concept. And the fact that you get to see some of the Ring camera footage showing these children simply running off into the dark, I think is really interesting. The opening monologue with the setup section from a young child who I don't think we actually see in the movie, who's voiced by Scarlett Cher. That's really interesting. I think that she actually does a really good job. they don't have her age here on IMDb, but she looks fairly young. And as we've talked about a lot here on the New Wave Nerds and various other videos, with child actors, it's really hit or miss. When you've got a good one, it is great. But when you have somebody who's not that great, it is glaringly obvious because of the fact that they're a child. But I think both of the main child actors in this movie do great. Both Scarlett Cher with the voiceover narration and Cary Christopher as young Alex. I think he does a tremendous job. I think he's actually recently signed on, or it was recently announced that he was signed on to play a young version of a character in the upcoming Lanterns TV series. According to IMDb, he's also attached to Spider Noir, so this kid's got the comic book shows on lockdown, I guess. It's IMDb, so with the Spider Noir, take that with a grain of salt, but he was fairly good, and I'm interested in seeing him continue on and do more things. I think he was very, very believable. The acting, by and large, in this movie is fairly good. Of course, we have Josh Brolin, classic. He's great in basically everything. I'm a big fan of Josh Brolin. We've seen lots of movies. We've reviewed a few. I guess I was going to say we reviewed a lot, but I don't know necessarily if that's true. But he's a tremendous actor, and he brings that here as this father who has lost his son. I think it's very interesting. The emotion is very believable there. The main lead for this is Julia Garner, who again is a great actress, but I don't know necessarily if she's not a horror actress, in my opinion. I think some of the more dramatic moments of the film, she does very, very well. But when it comes to acting scared, I don't believe it. To me, none of her screams are believable, and that's a fundamental aspect of being a horror actress, period. We talk about people like Jenna Ortega or Mia Goths, the younger generation of horror actors. They've got that aspect nailed. They are so good at it. Julia Garner may be in some ways a better actor than those two, but as far as the genre of horror goes, she does not live up to those two, and that's really unfortunate. I was really excited to see Julia Garner in other things. I know that she was in Ozark, for which I believe she was nominated, or maybe even perhaps won an Emmy. She's won 3 Emmys. I can't find it. Here we go. Yes, for Ozark, 4 Emmys. Yeah, why did it say 3 there? I don't know. For Inventing Anna and for playing, who is this? Ruth Langmore in Ozark? I don't know. I haven't seen the show. I obviously know that it's one that's been reviewed very highly. Everybody in my family seems to enjoy it, but I just haven't gotten around to it. So I know she's a tremendous actress. I've seen her in The Royal Hotel, where she was one of the good parts of that movie. And then obviously she was great as Shala Ball, the Silver Surfer in Fantastic Four: The First Steps. So she is a good actress. She has a lot of potential, but not right for a horror movie, in my opinion. The other actor who I was actually surprised to see do very well in this was Alden Ehrenreich. My perception of this actor has really been colored due to the Solo movie, which by and large had some good moments, but was not great by any definition of the word. But after seeing his performance in this and also in Ironheart, Alden Ehrenreich is actually a pretty good actor. He's actually pretty good. He's good when he's not trying to be Harrison Ford. He's good when he's being his own character. I liked him in both of these projects, both of these recent releases. His character in the movie is a little bit... There's some things to enjoy about him, and there's some things that make you absolutely hate him, but what are you going to do? That's a good character, somebody who you enjoy seeing, but sometimes question rather what their role is in this. He had some really fascinating moments when we get to the third act, when we've got Julia Garner and Josh Brolin in Alex's house confronting Gladys. I think there's really some interesting moments. And Benedict Wong, of course, another great actor, with a role, or rather a performance that I was absolutely not suspecting at all. he comes in and he is just the principal of this, school. And you sort of just expect him to sort of stay the voice of reason throughout this. But eventually he becomes overtaken by the mind control that Gladys has used, the witchcraft mind control, whatever, that Gladys has used to abduct the children. And when he is running after Julia Garner and attacking Josh Brolin, it is really, really interesting. He surprisingly does a really good, crazed, mind-addled person. It was very, very well done. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I was not expecting to see that from him. I assumed that if he was going to be there, it would be in just a brief appearance, like I said, being the voice of reason, being the face of the school until the story expands outward. But he actually becomes really involved in it. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about the movie that I enjoyed more or less was the way that the story is told. The structure of it is really, really interesting. It's told in parts, with each part being from the viewpoint of a different character. I believe the order is Julia Garner, and then Josh Brolin, and then Alden Ehrenreich, and then Austin Abrams, and then Alex. I think Benedict Wong is in there too. I could be wrong about the order. I know that first it is Julia Garner and then Josh Brolin. I'm fairly certain it's Paul after that, but I could be wrong. Regardless, that's not the interesting part here. Telling a story that way is not exactly a new thing. It's not exactly like you're, reinventing the wheel or whatever. But I think that it plays it off really well. And I think the best part about it, the reason that it works so well, is because when the stories cross, when you see the same scene or the same moment from a different person's viewpoint, there are subtle changes. And I think that is really, really interesting. For example, the one that comes to mind right away is when we first see this when we are in the Paul chapter, the Alden Ehrenreich chapter, and he is a cop. And, we see him going through his life, and he interacts with Austin Abrams, whose character's name is James, who is a drug addict in the city. And the way, when they finally come together, there's a moment where, Alden Ehrenreich is like, hey, if I put my hands in your pockets, am I going to get stuck with something? And James says no. But then when he reaches his hands in his pocket, he does get stuck with a needle. And he freaks out after this. He punches Austin Abrams straight in the head. He goes into his car and, starts preparing the wound or whatever, realizes that the dash cam is on and unplugs it. And so he's freaking out, realizing that he has done something horrible. And so he goes out, wakes James up from his state of unconsciousness, and is like, his voice is shaking. He's talking like, hey, I did you wrong. You did me wrong. Let's forget this ever happened. But I don't ever want to see you around here again. And James agrees and goes on, and they do, their regular things. But then when we see that same scene from the viewpoint of James, who again is played by Austin Abrams, the difference in the performance of Alden Ehrenreich is really, really interesting. In the Paul chapter, his voice is trembling, his hands are shaking, he's freaking out. But when we see it from James' perspective, he's completely calm and cool and collected and very, very menacing. It looks as though he's legitimately threatening Abrams. There's none of the fear that we see when it's from Paul's viewpoint. And it's moments like that where I think are really interesting, and I think make the fact that the story is broken up this way work. If it weren't for little things like that, little details that emphasize that this is from the viewpoint of different people, I don't know if it would necessarily work so much. I think it would get repetitive, where it's like, okay, we just saw this. Can we move on? Can we advance the story in some other way? But those little details really, really capture the spirit, the essence of what they're trying to do by breaking the story up this way. I think it is very, very well done. And all of this to say, again, it I feel like what I'm saying here hits home the point of what I said at the beginning. The entire first, hour and a half, hour and 45 of this movie is really strong. It's really good. Like it's again, like I said, not great. There's nothing groundbreaking about it, but it's really, really good. I was invested in it. It's when we get to the end with that final scene where I'm like, okay, this is going to sour my viewpoint of this movie for the rest of my life. It's one of those moments where when I think of this movie, I'm not going to think about, 5 years from now or whatever. If I still think about this movie 5 years from now, I'm not going to be thinking about the performance of Josh Brolin. I'm not going to be thinking about Alden Ehrenreich or the way that the story is split up. I'm not even going to be thinking about necessarily the story of the children disappearing. The thing that I'm going to think about first is Gladys running through a neighborhood like this, running away from these kids in a very Ferris Bueller's Day Off style scene. That's going to be the first thing that I think about. And that's really, really unfortunate. With almost any movie, but especially a movie that is built around a mystery, the way that you stick the landing is far and away the most important aspect of the movie. One of the reasons why Chinatown is so good, and this is completely different genre, but revolves around a mystery. That's my point here. One of the reasons that movie is so good, of course, Jack Nicholson, the direction of an unfortunate individual, the acting of everybody involved in that movie is fantastic. The story's written great, but when it comes down to the end, and Jack Nicholson confronts, oh man, now I can't remember her name, and this is really going to bother me. I just watched this movie again. Faye Dunaway. There we go. I just watched it last week. When he confronts her and is like, who is she? And he's like, my daughter, my sister, so on. I'm not going to give the full breadth of the scene in case you haven't seen it yet, which if you haven't, what are you doing? It's that moment. And then it is the last 10 minutes of the movie with Faye Dunaway driving away. And one of Jack Nicholson's, cohorts, one of his employees comes up to him and says, let it go, Jack. It's Chinatown. It's because of those moments at the end that solidify that movie as great. If that movie had ended in a different way, it wouldn't matter how good the entire first, how long is the movie? 210. It wouldn't matter how good the entire first hour and a half, hour 45 are. If that landing didn't stick, we would not be talking about the movie today as one of the best detective movies ever told. The ending is far and away the most important moment of the film, and this one did not land it. And because of that, I can't rate it as highly as I would otherwise, and I can't agree with any of the other media sources. Like IGN is just the one that comes to mind because I just saw it earlier today. IGN gave it a 9 out of 10. That's really high to me. To me, because of the ending, this is probably a 6.5 or a 7 max. If I watch it again, maybe the beginning would make up a little bit for the end, and I'd be able to push it up towards a 7. But as it stands right now, for me, it's a 6.5. The ending is not great. It's really not. Of course, the voice narration comes back in some really interesting ways and recontextualizes the way that you see the lives of these kids right at the end and so on and so forth. But it does not stick the landing. And for that, I don't know if I would recommend paying full price for a movie ticket for this. I think if you're looking for something to go see tonight on the day that this video is released, then go do it because you got $5 ticket Tuesdays or whatever, so on. I think it's great. I think it's fine for that. But me personally, I'm a little sad that I paid $13 for the ticket to have the movie end up that way. But that's just me. Everybody's viewpoint is different. I don't know. Comment down below. Let me know if you agree with what I'm saying or if you think that it is a modern horror masterpiece. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. Make sure that you like and subscribe for more nerd content and commentary. And I will see you guys next week to talk about more